more tragedy at sea as the Mediterranean becomes the graveyard for more people fleeing poverty or war or persecution to reach Europe. The Italian authorities have opened an investigation into the deaths of 41 people who died when their boat capsized. They were crossing from Sfax in Tunisia, hoping to reach Italy. There were just 4 survivors rescued by a merchant vessel and then handed over to the Italian Coast Guard. The United Nations agency, the International Organization for Migration, says the first quarter of 2023 has been the deadliest for 6 years on the Mediterranean. Sofia Betitzer has our top story from Rome.
This is the moment 3 young adults and a child were found adrift in the Mediterranean Sea.
And it's really important and urgent if you could support these people, possibly taking them on board.
They were spotted by the crew of a plane run by a migrant charity, which called out to a passing ship for help.
To him, food and water.
Their original boat had capsized and sank, throwing the 45 people on board into the water.
We are getting them on board.
But these 4, originally from the Ivory Coast and Guinea, were the only ones to survive and make it safely on board the cargo vessel.
4 migranti salvati dalla Guardia Costiera.
The 4 migrants rescued by the Coast Guard arrived at Lampedusa this morning. They say they survived by hanging on to inflatable rubber devices. Then they clung to an abandoned motorless boat for days until their rescue.
The survivors are 2 men and 1 woman in their 20s and a 13-year-old boy. They only had small cuts and bruises and were dehydrated.
Shipwrecks like these are becoming more frequent. In the last few days, more than 2,000 migrants have been rescued and brought to Lampedusa. According to the United Nations, this is by far the most dangerous migrant crossing in the world. And it's a political issue as well. Italy's right-wing government under Giorgia Meloni was elected on a promise to clamp down on illegal migration. But so far this year, nearly 94,000 migrants have reached Italy by sea. That's already double last year's figure. So for all the tough talk, more people are arriving here, and still many others are dying trying to make it. Immigration continues to be one of the most controversial political issues across Europe. It played a key role in the rise of nationalist parties across the continent over the past decade. And while that debate rages all the time, yet more lives are being lost. Sofia Betitzer, BBC News, Rome.
Our diplomatic correspondent Caroline Hawley is here. We just heard Sofia there say 94,000 migrants this year alone have reached Italy. The figures are astonishing.
The figures are very dramatic, both the numbers of those on the move and those dying, making the journey. On this one route from North Africa to Europe, 120,000 people attempted the crossing so far this year, most arriving in Italy. Around 2,000 have died or disappeared, and that's likely to be a vast underestimate, as boats often sink without trace. And then, Clive, since 2014, there have been at least 20,000 deaths, so the numbers are really shocking. Why are people making this dangerous journey? Well, one word, I'd say: desperation, conflict, dire living conditions, human rights abuses. More people are now moving after COVID, and I think we're likely to see more people moving with crises exacerbated by climate change. And then you have Europe and the UK grappling with how to respond, with people trying to reach their shores. Their responses have often been criticised by human rights groups. The EU has deals with Tunisia and Libya, which are meant to deter the smugglers, prevent boats from leaving, and also to send migrants back to their home countries. But still the boats, which are often not seaworthy, are setting off. And aid agencies say there is a moral imperative for European countries to do much, much more to save lives. And today, 3 UN agencies put out a joint statement, and what they've called for is coordinated search and rescue efforts, more resources put into those efforts. They want more safe and legal routes for people to claim asylum. But the fear is that there's going to be a lot more of what one UN official described to me as this carnage at sea.
Sure. Okay, Caroline, thank you. Caroline Hawley there.